to Blacklight Mass Incarceration Show. I am your host, Ciara Cobb. Blacklight Mass Incarceration Show is a space that is used to uplift the unheard voices of the criminal and social justice issues that many face today. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoy. Okay, well, just kind of talk to us about, your wrongful conviction of how you became incarcerated, and then we'll talk about, your experience on reasonable doubt.
Oh yeah, for sure. So, I'm not sure how much you're already familiar with, or any of this type would be familiar with, but the gist is, I was just a normal guy. In my early 20s, involved in the bus scene, and I went home with somebody I didn't know and wasn't aware of the things they had going on in their personal life. Got honed in on as a suspect because I was the last person leaving with them, even though they didn't pass away the next day, the next evening, actually. It was an opening story on the local media every day for about a week because it went unsolved. I did go into interview with police and tell them everything I could to do everything I could to help them.
Mm-hmm.
They took me home and everything was fine. But then, like a week later, they couldn't find any other suspect, or I don't know how they would explain themselves or why they did what they did, but they arrested me. And I was brought to this weird offsite location where my lawyers didn't know where I was, family didn't know where I was for some hours. They took all my clothes, they back my evidence, even though it kind of happened a week earlier. It seemed that they just did it so they could put me in a white paper suit, and then they paraded me into the downtown Ville, which in Phoenix, I think Phoenix is probably the biggest city in the country, so it's a huge jail. What?
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought I would at least get to go call my lawyer, but they put me in a cell where there was no phone, and they just left me there. So I remember that was the first. When they came to my house and arrested me, I wasn't that worried. I just thought this is a misunderstanding. They'll be able to clear it up, and I'll be home in a couple of days. But I remember when they put me in that cell with no phone, and I'd been gone for hours, and nobody knew where I was. And that was the first moment where I kind of got scared. Like, I don't know. No, I don't know whose hands I think.
Right. So I used to hear that Phoenix used to make people incarcerated, especially in the jails, wear pink jumpsuits. Is that still going on, or is that a long thing? I know. I know. I know in Arizona they used to make the jumpsuits were pink, I think, at one time. Are they still like that?
Oh yeah, I mean, I can't speak for how it is now because at this point I've been in GOC for 13 years. But back then, yeah, they made us wear the black and white striped jumpsuits with pink boxers, pink socks, and that was part of Sheriff Joe's, which is sort of a humiliation campaign. It was part of his political platform. And those who don't know, Sheriff Joe is for Ohio. Uh, he's he's I don't know, he's pretty widely known. I'm not sure what state we're in or how broad this is, but most people nationally know who he is.
Yeah, we know who he is. So tell us what happened when you went to court. Like did you go to trial?
No, my first court appearance was with my state attorney, who, when I found out throughout the week that I was being investigated for this, I called a lawyer that I already knew because I had gotten DUI a few years earlier. He represented me on that, so I called him, set it all up. We would happen. He would come down and help me out. The family gave me a first court date. He would not let me talk. He said not to talk. He said, I'm just going to read this to you and I'm going to talk. He said, don't talk at all because every room in this jail is booked for sound and legal visits. So I listened. He read a charge summary, and then he said something like, it made me feel like he believed everything he just read. So it was really disappointing. He just said something like, well, we should keep the country. He should that one for you.
Wow.
Now, he told me later that he had known my prosecutors, they were good, and that my prosecutor told him he did not think I committed the crime. He only thought that I knew more about the crime, which I thought was I don't know, it's prosecutorial misconduct to prosecute someone for something that you don't think they did, but they were using it as a gesture to get information from me that I didn't have.
Exactly.
So the thing about the thing about that lawyer is, and after I had sat there for 2 months and they had put me on the news a bunch of times and realized they didn't have any information to give them, it was too late for them to walk it back. So they just kept doing more shady stuff, railroad me. That lawyer was not certified in capital cases.
That's what I was about to ask.
Attorney, who's another famous guy, he's like Sheriff Joe. He later through his disbarred for abuse of power. He's not even allowed to. He can't file bankruptcy for you or even do a divorce for you now. But at that time, he had all the power over the biggest prosecutorial agency in the United States, and he sought the death penalty in my case, which removed my private attorney, who we had already given all the money to. That attorney kept that money, and they appointed a public defender to my case.
And how did the public defender do? How do you feel like he did or she?
The initial one she was really zealous as far as the law went. She fought a lot and argued a lot. We got our 1 minute warning, so I'm going to call right back right now, and then I'll tell you all about what she did and why the court removed her against my wishes and replaced her with a hatchet man.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, we can go longer.
Okay, because I don't. There's so much juicy stuff in here. I don't want to skip the other, but I don't want to run out of time before we get to the reasonable doubt part.
You're fine. Go ahead.
Okay, so Rena Gletzel, she was a private attorney. She was appointed to my case because the Office of Public Defense Services had hired a whole bunch of private attorneys to get involved in cleaning up what they called here the capital case crisis. That district attorney I mentioned earlier, his name is Andrew Thomas, who was disbarred for abuse of power. He had arbitrarily sought the death penalty in so many cases that he had completely flooded the courts, and everybody had huge backlogs and delays that were violating everyone's constitutional rights to condemn. But being with one of the private attorneys that were given government to help clean up that mess, she was given my case. When she saw what was going on, she filed a bunch of motions having to do with legalities, where oral arguments were heard, and she basically told the judge now what was happening was unconstitutional and wrong, and she was given certain promises when getting into it that were broken, and she was afraid of violating her own ethical standards and losing her license. And I was given a hearing shortly after that, and all of this is really detailed, described, quoted from minute entries and police reports in the book that I wrote. A secret hearing was held where I was not allowed to go to. They refused to transport me, and then they told my judge that I refused to be transported, which I didn't. My family and I were very adamant about being at every court date. The courtroom was full every time I had a court date. They didn't want anybody there. The judge sealed the minute, so nobody has ever read the transcript from that day. All I know is that Rena was fired by the judge from my case, removed, and replaced with public defender, real public defender, Richard St. Miller. Rick came in and made himself feel really comfortable. He has just the awesomest demeanor and personality that you could imagine. So comforting. I told him in the very first meeting, I'm innocent. We're going to consider a plea. So please just let's get ready for trial. And I had to tell him that because by then I had learned how to do things. I'd been in the jail for about a year and a half at that point. So he said, yeah, absolutely. You go along with it? He acted like that was cool. A week before trial, told me we're going to win for sure. And then 3 days before my trial date, he came in and was icy cold. I'd never seen this from him before. Told me that I was going to get found guilty and I was going to get executed. And he said that he had just left a meeting with my mom and dad and told them the same thing. And my secretary attorney, Marcy Patter, who was another private attorney who was appointed by the OPDS, she chimed in and said that I could go to DOC and get a DNA test done. And if the used condoms found next to the victim's body came back to her boyfriend, this guy named Nate, some mysterious character named Nate, that I would be exonerated. So they told me, Rick said, look, by law, a jury will have to acquit you because there's no evidence that you committed any crimes. He said, but in this county, they just won't. And I had seen happening guys around me enough by now to know that what he was seeking was was plausible. And there was a guy who had been on death row for 15, 20 years at this point. I was reading about the newspaper every day, who had new DNA evidence that served him. His name was Douglas Grant. At the last minute, the governor ordered him to be executed. That's how they did away with his controversial case. So that scared me, and I knew that the danger that Rick was alluding to was real. And once I get to the DNA that's done, they exonerate me, and I knew for a fact it wasn't my DNA. So I thought I had an automatic, for sure, exoneration come in right after I got the DOC. That's how they sold it to me. You're going to die if you don't. You're going to get out. You're now do. So I still didn't try to right away. What it said, then it was a lot of conversation with my dad and my family. They're planning going to DOC and pursuing those DNA results, which it was just shocking, upsetting. The way the state argued against it and the way the courts denied it, I began to realize that my attorneys were either just wrong or they had completely lied to me.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't find it. 10 years into my conviction, and in a case, I got a package from like a whistleblower or something in the prosecutor's office. It was a DNA match. They had found the guy. He had been arrested a bunch of times. This opened up a whole new window of activity in my exoneration efforts, and a lot of people got involved. A lot of really great people who really did their job well, aren't just good lawyers and investigators. They're just solid people. And they did everything they could. We all did everything we could. And the court still denied our DNA. We argued for at least an evidentiary hearing. Obviously, we're arguing for them to please exonerate me, overturn the conviction, but as an alternative, these at least does have an evidentiary hearing. They would not allow us to have an evidentiary hearing. They never granted one. That would have been an opportunity to get everything on the record. I noticed in Arizona that they exonerated quite a few people from 2005 till 2000,
Mm-hmm.
and then it just stopped. It was like the state just stopped doing it, and it was like they looked back at these cases, and I know some of these individuals have communicated with them since then. It's as if the state looks back at those and say, "What did we do wrong?" Instead of saying we convicted an innocent guy or we created evidence, instead of pointing to that what they did wrong, they say, "Well, we should have never granted an evidentiary hearing. That's where we went wrong. That's where the guy got out." So they just stopped granting it and they start covering this book. Now, when the DNA came back to this guy, Nate Noble, and I think this is public information anyway, it's in the book, Nate Noble. Detective goes down there to interview him in regards to the DNA match. This is 8 years after the murder, which if this detective really thought it was over, he had his bad guy, he wouldn't go interview this guy. He didn't need to if the case really was closed. But he went down there and he interviewed Noble. And when he walked in, the first thing Noble said was, "Are you here about the murder in 2008?" Didn't say hello, how you doing? Nothing. That was his first question. And they ended the interview pretty abruptly, and they covered it up ever since. And this guy matches the composite sketch. The only eyewitness to this entire situation gave us a composite sketch and a description that looks exactly like him, which looks nothing like me because I have a round face and black hair. This guy had skinny face and bushy, reddish, brownish hair. So reasonable doubt gets involved. We think that they're going to be the people who finally do what's right here and expose this DNA match. That was really the sole purpose of getting them involved. We want the world to see this DNA match that has been covered up. The DNA match of the actual person who has been terrorizing with for 10, 15 years. Getting away with it because it looks like he's probably a confidential informant based on what he said in his police reports. And those are extensive too. And many of those are quoted in the book as well under the chapter The World of Noble. Thankfully, I knew a lawyer who had done a favor for the ex-police officer who had the issues with his kids, so he then did her a favor by giving her these reports, which were then given to me, and I included. So all this information is factual. Reasonable doubt. Whew, that was a rough chapter. It was really exciting at first. They dug themselves up into our family dynamic really deeply in a really warm manner. And through months of extensive emailing and phone calls and meetings and conversations and everything, they really gained our trust. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, they lied and said there was really no DNA in this state. They wouldn't reveal the DNA match because when it got close to filming, producer Matt Basora told me that they are entertainment, they're not news, so that they're expected to follow privacy laws and not reveal people's names, people who were not arrested, which I knew was false because of watching Dateline 48 hours, which you've done all the time. At that point, it was too late to stop, and I figured honest viewers would see through the spin anyway. And because we have been let down by the court so many times, we kind of felt like we didn't have any other option anyhow. But their dealings with us ended up being definitely the most deep and complex manipulation that we've dealt with this entire time, which speaks volume.
Yeah.
So it was really tough. It really let us down. We really got personally connected to them, really believed in them, really felt a lot of love there. That was a pretty devastating betrayal, and just the dishonesty on screen was to deal with.
So do you think they just use do you think that they just use cases to get viewers? They're not really trying, it's not about finding the truth, it's just kind of entertainment, and they kind of put a spin on what they think viewers will, engage in?
Yeah, well, we on TV, so we talked to them a lot about it, and they didn't want to talk to those things. One of them was my best friend. They wouldn't include them in the process, and basically what we come up with, because we couldn't figure out why they did what they did, it was so baffling. But these TV shows business. They have to make money about ratings, and any business has to bring in more profit than they have overhead. And reasonable doubt business model, as far as I understand it, if you're innocent, they'll hire you a lawyer. Well, if they do 10 episodes a season, what if all 10 are innocent? They can't afford to hire $10 million lawyers because that's what capital case or jury case would require.
Mm-hmm.
So I would guess going into each season, they know that they can only pick one or two, if that many. Additional to that, I would say that, typically host Chris Anderson was a career police officer, and I kind of wonder if some of that has to do with, if some of the thinking has to do with that, because when they came out here in Arizona to film, they would not allow my lawyer or other people to be involved or talk to them or show them around to the spots where they were going. But they allowed a CSO detective to escort them everywhere. So he was involved in their filming and helping them, quote unquote, understand the situation. But that CSO person would not answer any questions, would not appear on camera. And I was on the phone with the producer while he was with him, and I asked him, please ask him these questions. And the CFO guy just would not agree to answering questions or be on camera, but they still let him. They said them the whole time they were here. So they were about it.
So what about the lady? I thought she was supposed to have been an attorney. The one that was with the co-host with Chris.
Fatima?
Yeah.
Good question. Well, we were just talking about this the other day. As soon as they walked out of filming, one of my family members called them. They met him outside, and the family member was basically like, "What the heck was that? What is going on here?" And she said, "Hey," she said, "Hey, as a California attorney, I feel that this is a cartel situation for sure." But she wouldn't say that on camera. I don't know if she didn't want to put herself in danger. The people that I introduced this person to, the victim in the States, they're cartel connected, Sinaloa people. So that was a pretty popular theory. Good reason. That appeared to be her belief. And she voiced that to a family member after filming. We were just talking about how we wish we would have got that recorded so we could have at least put it on social media.
I mean,
When I was pregnant, I'm wondering now if she, I don't know, if she's an ally, help somehow, but the naivety.
I just think that that's a weird combination to have an ex-detective, on reasonable doubt when he was already on A&E First 48. You know what I mean? So to me, that was it just struck me odd. I never really watched it. I watched like one episode, and then after that, I was like, nah, this is not. Mm-mm. I knew it was for entertainment, because how are you on that side and all of a sudden you switch over to wanting to see if people are actually, innocent, when I'm sure he's probably sent a lot of people to prison that didn't do anything by being a detective. So yeah. 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 Go ahead.
Right now, so I will call back.
Okay.
What you just said
You may begin speaking now.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Um, so first of all, what you said about watching the show and your initial thoughts was exactly the same thing my attorney and friend told me. Exactly the same thing that a law professor who I know told me, and my friend who did TV. They just said it looked like it was for entertainment, and one of them said it looked like the Jerry Springer of.
Mm-hmm.
I obviously didn't know what they meant because I've never seen it. We don't have that channel in here. But I knew within the first 3 or 4 minutes of talking to Chris on the phone that he was disingenuous. And that was the tough realization I had because Dan already sat down with some of my family members and I have recommended them to my family members and sort of given everybody yeah, let's go ahead and do this. And I felt like I had failed my family in allowing these people to infiltrate them the way they did. His question made it obvious that he had looked at key facts, and I think one example is that we have the actual DNA results from the lab where this person was tested to see if my DNA was on in them. And I requested these tests because I know I'm innocent. And it came back no, that it wasn't. Well, I'm on the phone with Chris, and he says, "Oh, correct me if I'm wrong, but your DNA was found in this person." And I said, "No, you are wrong." And I'm thinking, how did we get this far without you even knowing that? How did we get to the day of filming and interviewing? I don't even have that fact right. Then I was like, oh no, it's just one of those guys. And I can only assume he got that detail probably from the FCSO detective that was escorting him around town. So yeah, I did get to listen to the episode. I listened to the audio, and I did hear him say, "No, there wasn't really any DNA in this case." And that was just tough to hear somebody who has that kind of power with his voice to mislead an entire audience that way because the DNA match, this guy, he has reason we got them involved because he thought they used their platform. You know,
Well, you gotta realize that Chris used to be, an investigative homicide detective, and before he was on Reasonable Doubt, he was on the first 48 as, the investigative detective, and I forgot whatever state he was in at the time when he was working. So really, I think that this is just my opinion that, he hopped on that show. I think A&E probably came to him and he hopped on that show to make more money because of course A&E pays them. They pay them to be on the first 48. I mean, I know a few states dropped out because they felt like, they were making people seem guilty, and then when they go to court, a lot of those people, the charges was dropped because they didn't have enough evidence, and so a lot of it was they were doing it for TV, and so a lot of the police departments did drop out, and so he that's how he thinks because he used to be a homicide investigator, you know what I mean? So he doesn't think about, okay, well, maybe this person is really innocent. That's what that when I first saw it, that's why I was like, I'm not watching this. Like I just watched this dude on the first 48 and I saw how he worked on the first 48. So how do you flip-flop that fast to be like, oh, well, let me figure out if these people are really innocent or if is there any reasonable doubt when I'm sure that he's probably sent a lot of people to prison that didn't do anything because of his investigative, you know, jackups and things of that nature. And then I just thought it was weird instead of having, an actual investigator, like a private investigator in Fatima, they had him. So those two combinations together just did not, in my opinion, just did not go together. So I think I watched one episode. I don't even think I got through the whole episode. Like I just read through it the first like 10 minutes of it. I'm like, no, they're not here to help anybody. They're just here for TV. Like this is, and I don't like for people to play on people because that's what's really going on in this movement. They're playing on people and using people who are innocent to get more clout for themselves. And yet and still, you have people that are still incarcerated. They still haven't got help. They got all this exposure, but they're still incarcerated. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I did my platform because my platform is for the incarcerated to tell their story because their story is never told. It's only told through what the prosecutors and the news want to tell, but it's never their side of the story of what really happened. So that's why I made my platform. Like my husband's incarcerated for the same thing. It was a capital murder case. He didn't do it. He wasn't even in the house when it happened. He was outside, had no idea, he was just with the wrong people basically at the wrong place at the wrong time. and end up getting charged with capital murder. And he was the very first one they tried. They told him the same thing. His defense attorney told him the same thing. Well, if you go to, he said, he said, I'll put on the best show that I can put on, but you're going to get found guilty and you're going to get the death penalty. He said, so sign this plea deal because I'd rather for you to come home than not to come home. And I hear that so much from everybody. And on top of his public defender was playing golf with the DA. So to me, that's conflict of interest. They should never be playing golf when they're actually doing a case. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're friends, after, but like while you're going through that case, there should be no contact because to me, that's conflict of interest. You don't know what they're talking about on that golf course. They'd be making deals left and right with one another.
Exactly. And here in Arizona,
we're in North Carolina.
Here in Arizona, they're unapologetic about it. They're open about it. I've got quotes in my book about Arizona Attorney Magazine where the public defender here was saying at that time, he says, we are happy to announce we now work at full partners with law enforcement agencies and the county attorney's office to ensure that what is best is done for the public. So how can you get zealous representation when your counselor is working admittedly full partners with the people who are trying to take your life? It's insane.
Exactly. You can't. It's not fair. That's why I say it's never been a fair justice system. There's no fairness to it at all because you are convicting people who haven't done anything, and then the people that have done something are out on the street or they get less time, or it's just. So how long did you actually get through the plea deal?
I'm at 22 total, 23, but I would get out after 22. Crazy thing is, now in hindsight, I look back and I look at my public defender and I realize he knew what he was talking about. It might be the only reason I'm going home because of the shady stuff he did. It was like what he did to me was like tough love. Like I felt like he did really have love for me. He knew the system that I was messing with. I didn't know. He did.
Right.
And 42, I'm extremely healthy. I have everything I need. I'll be going home in a few years. That like, dang, I'm actually gonna have a pretty good life, which is crazy.
But still, they can't give you back what they've already taken from you for something you didn't do.
I have what I have because I don't know, if you believe in God or anything, but I do. I think especially when we're done wrong by people and entities, institutions here that you see that if you tap in your hand and do things right, do things this way, you have a way of going around all the instructions to give us the blessings that we really need.
Mm-hmm.
Easily.
Absolutely.
Me and my family off for years.
But God will, he'll right that wrong. It might not be the way that we want or the way that we expected, but he will always right that wrong. And, even though you've spent a lot of your time incarcerated, it probably has made you a better person. And then you'll be able to fight the system. You will be able to come out and know how to fight the system and help other people who are going through that. And that's why, I do a lot of advocacy. I do a lot of pretrial advocacy and try to teach people how to do that because it's important to have outside eyes to bring in what's going on. Like I had this one guy who had the exact same charge, capital murder. And what I did was I showed up to all of his court cases and we did 2 press conferences. We did one with the family and then we did one with the organization I was working with. And just honestly, I think by putting his family on there and the people seeing his family cry, when he went to trial, he was found not guilty. Like they had absolutely no evidence on him either. But I think that if we wouldn't have done that and I wouldn't have been there to put pressure on the state, that he probably would have been found guilty of capital murder and, could have faced the death penalty.
That's subjective and it's that emotional because we're dealing with people. Those things matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. It's to ensure that there is some type of fairness because if not, there's not going to be any type of fairness. But the good thing about it was that his attorney knew he didn't do it. And he knew he needed outside help. And he was like, look, we need outside help. He didn't do it. And, we need for somebody to make noise on the outside. And that's what probably saved his life. I mean, he got a plea deal, but I mean, it was like 14 years, and he'd already done 6. So he only has to do 9. So it was still better than, life.
Well, there's a book titled Why Innocent People Plead Guilty, which is written by a sitting New York federal judge, Ray Cobb. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but the fact that they book written by a judge about why the people plead guilty speaks to the problem.
It does. And a lot of people don't understand why people plead guilty. It's several things. A lot of times, you're misled. You're misled by your supposed to be attorney that's, I guess maybe they feel like they just can't fight the system, but I feel like if you're an attorney, then you have to stand up and fight no matter what. Like this one guy I read, he said it took his public defender 10 years to uncover the prosecutorial misconduct, but he did not stop until he was able to uncover it and he got that guy out. Yeah. Yeah. It's very rare. So, I hope to be like that. I'm currently going to school now for criminal justice and want to go to be a lawyer because it's just too many people who are just suffering for no reason and being convicted for something that they didn't do. So, I want to be one of those fierce advocates that don't give up no matter what the state comes with. I'm coming right back at them.
Yeah, I want to use my strength, my energy, my youth, my assets to help when I get out. And when I walk out, I definitely want to be big on exposure. I will have a platform. I've thought about trying to help create something similar to a justice project or a law clinic or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do yet, but I've already got the book. I've already got a friend in TV. I've got a journal string. I don't know. Did you get help information from the other podcaster?
I think your brother's supposed to be sending it over or sending my information. Okay.
And she's doing, it ends up being a really good vehicle to take people through all the different problems because it was just a nexus of a lot of different types of corruption. So she's going to do multiple seasons just about this case. She's gone through a lot of lengths to make sure it's a really high level production with people who can help her like that. She would love to talk to you. I told her about you. So she would send the information over. So
definitely
help people in the future because there aren't enough people fighting that fight.
There isn't. Yeah, let's definitely keep in contact. I can download Securist or JPay and we can, message back and forth. But yeah, let's keep in contact. I mean, because the only way to tackle the system is it's got to be a larger movement than what they have. You know what I mean?
We have to come together and we can do stuff.
1 minute remaining.
Were you?
Yes, and I'm gonna get it. Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna say, but if you don't have time, if you're not, you can send it to your husband. But it's helpful. And also, there's a book called Blind Injustice written by a guy named Mark.
Yep, I've heard of it. I haven't read it, but I heard of it.
You gotta read it. Anyone involved in the innocence movement, you have to read this book.
I will.
We're out of time. If you want to talk again, anytime, let me know.
Thank you so much, Justin. You have a good one. Well, Blacklight, I have brought you another story of the harms of the justice system, how people get caught up in the system who are wrongfully convicted, and how there seems to be no justice, as you heard. He had great lawyers. He was able to try to work on his behalf to get him an evidentiary hearing, and you see it was denied. This is why we do what we do, to continue to bring education about the harms of the system and how so many people get caught up in the system over nonsense, and how there's just so much injustice and there's no such thing as a justice system, because when you are incarcerating people and wrongfully convicting them for something they did not do, it's a tragedy. It really is. And to hear his story and to know that he did all he could to try to free himself and wasn't able to do that, even having good attorneys and doing stories on reasonable doubt. They just took his story and used it for their gain. They wasn't really trying to help him. So you just have to be careful. We have to continue to educate ourselves and stay informed. And this is why we must stay on top of the justice system and know that we will not continue to allow them to falsely incarcerate our people for something they did not do. Make sure if you're incarcerating people that you have the right person for the crime. I mean, you heard him. He said that they found the guy that committed the crime and he's still serving time and looks like he's going to serve his whole sentence And you can't get that back. When you have 20 something years of your life taken away from you, you can't get that back. You know what I mean? And so please, Blacklight, I urge y'all to stay vigilant, stay on top of things. One last reminder before I go, we have a YouTube channel. Please go over there, like, subscribe, and share. We have a lot of in-person interviews on there. I know a lot of you are listening on some type of podcast platform, but we do have in-person interviews. So please go over there and like and subscribe and share. We're trying to get our followers there. Until the next time, peace and love.